Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Is 7:07 on this Pi Day, March 14th, in your nation's capital. Go have a pizza. That's all I got for you. You know what? Coconut cream pie. If you had to have a cream pie, do you like the coconut cream pie or the banana cream pie?
Coconut all the way.
Yeah. Well, you're an island girl.
Yes.
I understand.
Coconut all the way.
And it does make me think of Marianne on Gilligan's Island. She would make the coconut cream pie, and she was just...
How, I don't know, but it's remarkable how
well, the coconuts
I
understand. I'm just not sure where they got the flour and the shortening. Coming up for the crust, 7:35, we'll speak with Maryland State Senator Justin Reedy. 8:05 is going to be Tom Bevan of Real Car Politics, and at 8:35, Susan Ferricchio of the Washington Times. That is Island Girl Patrice Onwuka, and I am Mainlander Larry O'Connor. It's O'Connor and
Happy
Company.
Friday.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Joining us right now is the one, the only, Adam Guillette, accuracy in media, because whenever there are lunatics showing their two stripes at Ivy League campuses, like we saw yesterday at Columbia, we got to check in with Adam Guillette. Adam, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
So proud to be the resident expert on lunatics.
Yes, well, a certain kind of lunatic. Only the anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist lunatics. They're trying to, protest the detention and eventual deportation of Mahmoud Khalil. They keep calling him a college student, by the way. Isn't it true that he hasn't attended classes as a graduate? He's 30 years old, first of all, and he's a graduate student, but I believe his last class was in November or December, yet he was still living in student housing. What kind of student was he exactly?
The dangerous, violent type, which is the prototypical student at Columbia, it would seem. And yes, we were shocked when we heard that he was one of the people on our list who was arrested for potential deportation, because we stopped targeting him because we saw that he graduated. We've got a big, long list of anti-Semites, many of whom are foreign, that they could easily send home to reunite mom and dad. I hear Syria is wonderful this time of year, and he wasn't one of the first ones that we were considering. Nevertheless, I am absolutely delighted to see him go. I apologize for the people of Louisiana that he's currently one of their residents, but hopefully that'll be a brief stay before he's reunited, as I said, with mom and dad.
Adam, it's obvious that these protests are not organic. They're not authentic. These are paid protesters weaving their ways in with students who are helpful idiots. I hate calling people names, but these young people, they're so misguided and they think they're doing something. Do you have a sense of where the money, though, is coming from for these protests?
Well, what I always say is that the money really comes from the American taxpayers. Most of these students, it's not that they hate Jews per se, they hate Western civilization. This 30-year-old student, supposedly student, who's going to be deported, was calling for the, quote, total eradication of Western civilization. And American students spend 13 years hearing DEI garbage in public education, even in red states. So, yeah, it's no surprise that when they arrive at a university and they see charismatic leaders who want to harness that anti-Western, anti-American energy, that, yeah, they're absolutely ready to go engage in violence to combat repression and combat oppression and advance their wacky DEI ideas.
Are you surprised that the Democrat Party establishment, I mean, you don't get more establishment than Dick Durbin and the Senate Judiciary Committee, that they're willing to die on this? So that they've put out more statements, more photographs, free Mahmoud. They've done more for him than they have for actual American citizens of Jewish descent who are continuing to be held for, 500 days now by Hamas over in Israel.
It truly amazes me. They are the kid that is endlessly riding a bicycle and putting a stick in the spokes so that he can go over the handlebars. It was bad enough that they positioned themselves as a party on the side of, boys, biological boys in girls' sports, even though a majority of Democrats were against that idea. But now to align yourself with someone who's openly pro-Hamas, who openly calls for violence, who openly calls for the eradication of Western civilization, who says he wants to, quote, bring the war home. For them to pick that as their hill to die on is truly astounding.
Adam, it must feel good now to see that after years and years of calling for, workplaces to understand that these anti-Semitic students, these violent students, shouldn't be hired, to calling out these universities for having these students there. It seems like maybe there's some accountability coming to some of these students. Columbia just expelled students who were part of the who seized one of their academic buildings last year. Do you think that's enough? And are you expecting to see other colleges follow suit?
What we've been saying all week at Accuracy in Media, Donald Trump was wrong. He told us we were going to get tired of winning. I don't think I'm ever going to get tired of winning. $400 million in federal funds cut just from Columbia, and they say, Leo Terrell says, there will be much more cut, as there should be. They get $1.2 billion annually from the federal government, which is insane. And yes, after considering all other options, Columbia has chosen to do the right thing. They've expelled and suspended some of these violent radicals. They're revoking degrees, albeit temporarily, I think, for many of them. But it's going to send a great lesson to these other universities. And if they fail to learn it, we will show up to provide them a little bit of education.
Do you think that these expulsions, we're speaking with Adam Guillette, by the way, Accuracy in Media, who's really been the tip of the spear here on pointing out the intolerance, the anti-Semitism, and the failed leadership at our Ivy League campuses. And Columbia has really been at the top of the list, which is saying something because Harvard ain't so good. Neither is Penn. But do you think that these expulsions, a year later, is directly linked to the Trump administration cutting off the $400 million in grants?
Oh, unquestionably, undeniably. Because let's remember, we all celebrated when they got rid of Manoush Shafiq, their horrible president, and they brought in a new president who had one job: tackle anti-Semitism. Instead, what did they do? They hired Joseph Mossad as a professor, a guy who called the October 7th terror attacks awesome, a guy who's also openly pro-Hamas. You had one job, and instead of addressing anti-Semitism, they ran screaming into the other direction. So now I have to say it can only be credited to the Trump administration cutting funding and threats of cutting accreditation. That's the only thing that I could believe is actually causing them to do a little bit of the right thing.
Adam, there's another aspect of this that doesn't get as much attention, and I don't know if you've delved into it or not, so forgive me if I'm throwing you a curveball, but my understanding is that the majority of undergrads in these schools, and it's not exclusively Ivy League, I think there's many state universities have the same phenomenon, that the majority of the undergrads tend to be foreign-born students because they have to pay full tuition. A lot of American students going to an American university, they're available for assistance, for scholarships, for in-state tuition breaks, things like that. But these colleges are so greedy, even though they've got these giant endowments. They're sitting, they look like Scrooge McDuck sitting on the big pile of gold. They can make snow angels in it. But they are taking a majority, like over 50% of their undergrad students are foreign-born, whether from China, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Algeria, because they get the full tuition and they can charge international rates for those full tuitions. So it's really a money grab.
It's incredibly ironic that these people profess to hate capitalism so very much when they've come up with such an incredibly clever racket. $80,000 a year in tuition, plus the $1.2 billion from the federal government annually, plus an endowment in the multi-billion-dollar level. These people are incredibly focused on grabbing cash. Now, I suppose it's not truly capitalistic because the $1.2 billion they're taking from us by force, whether we like it or not. But still, that's a clever money grab that they've been doing at many universities. I especially have personally noticed it at Harvard. And, these kids, all incredibly smarter than me. They all qualified for Harvard. I probably could barely qualify for community college. But when I go to Harvard, I think I see a higher percentage of Asians there than when I went to Seoul, South Korea. It is so incredibly Asian heavy.
Boy.
And again, these are brilliant scholars who all qualified. It's incredibly impressive. But yes, the percentage of foreign students is unbelievable.
By the way, as the father of an Asian American daughter, half Asian, but qualifies in terms of the way they figure out their racial makeup here in this country, she was denied entry to Harvard as an Asian American, but Chinese foreign-born students get a red carpet. Think that through for a minute. Adam, we got to leave it there, but as we continue to see Columbia University spotlighted in the news and we see the light shone on the insidious nature of what they've been doing at that Ivy League, always remember it was Accuracy in Media. It was Adam Guillette who first turned that light on. You've done great work, Adam, and we love Accuracy in Media. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Adam.
You're so kind. Thank you for having me.
WMAL, making sense of the news.
Hey, Patrice, you remember after the presidential campaign where Trump won in November in glorious fashion?
And we're still winning.
We were saying we cannot wait for all the tell-all books about how bad the Kamala Harris campaign was. We cannot wait for everybody to throw each other
all
under
the
the
dirt,
bus.
all the tea.
Well,
yes.
we're starting to get some leaks now from one of the books that's coming out. It's by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes. It's called Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. And it's about Kamala. Let's take a walk down memory lane. This is one anecdote that is circulating right now. It has to do with that first interview. Finally, they agreed to an interview, right? Kamala Harris never did an interview for like 8 weeks. She finally said she'd do an interview, but only with Tim Walz next to her. That was their demand, by the way. They made sure that it was Kamala Harris and Tim Walz with Dana Bash. Now, take a listen to this. This is, again, one of the slow pitches right over the plate that Dana Bash laid out there. What would you do as president? Here, listen.
If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that
you get
people
the picture. Just rambling word salad.
Let's leave that salad alone. It's too
in
early.
that flat nasal delivery and no specifics. And again, the easiest thing that now you would think, as the campaign insiders who were speaking to Jonathan Allen lay out, okay, this was a real problem. This is just started, the downhill slide. This interview, it wasn't the content, Patrice. It wasn't what you just heard and the fact that she couldn't answer a simple question. No. They look at that interview, these campaign people, and they say the real problem was the chair she was sitting on.
The chair?
The chair. I kid you not. Apparently, one of the big...
Oh, boy.
They're pointing fingers. They found a scapegoat, and the
Yeah.
problem is the chair she was sitting on made her look short and diminutive compared to Tim Walz. And if you look at a picture, it's true. She looks like a little
It
Lilliputian.
does.
Because guess what?
It does.
She's a short little woman. She's like 5'3" or something. I mean, that's what's going to happen when
She's
you're
petite.
next to a big behemoth like Tim Walz. And they positioned him downstage of the camera shot, so he's front and foremost. That makes people farther away from the camera look smaller already. And they're saying, this interview would have been a home run if only she had been on a taller chair.
Well, so this is it. But listen, okay, I get what they're saying. They're saying they're trying to find any scapegoat other than her because they don't want to bash her too much. If in case she becomes the nominee in 2018, these guys are still looking to find a payday and a wagon. They want to hitch their wagon to whatever candidate's going to run. So they don't want to come out and say it was her. We all know it was her. The voters overwhelmingly said it was her and her policies. But they're trying to find some other scapegoats. In the quote here, for the rest of the campaign, her team required that she be provided a chair that met certain specifications. It couldn't be shorter than 15 inches floor to the top of the seat, et cetera, and the arms had to hit at a certain place, making her look presidential. Still could not overcome the fact that she was a flawed candidate, that her policy positions were far to the left and what people did not want, and yet at the same time, she still was not a departure from the Biden administration and their failures over the past 4 years. So these tell-all, but this is a waste of time. I mean, you're not going to get the good, juicy stuff, which is I want to hear the curse words, the fighting between her and Kamala Harris and Walz. That's what's really good. This book, it's for somebody who wants to keep their job in the future.
It'll come. I'm enjoying it that they're so incompetent that coming out of that interview, the campaign team made it a priority to make sure that every interview she did after that had a chair that was a certain height requirement, instead of maybe sitting down with the candidate and saying, you sound like an imbecile. Don't stop with the word salad. When they ask you what you're going to do on day one, have a list of 5 things you're going to do. Trump can do that. He's going to drill, baby, drill. He's going to secure the border. Then he's going to secure the border again. And then he's going to secure the border. And then when he's done with that, he's going to secure the border. You should be able to do that. And if you can't, you shouldn't be running for president. But it's,
or
no,
at
no.
least at least jump behind the camera and look at the visual live so you could say, let's switch their seats. Like, no. I mean, if that's really what you care about, they could have just switched the seats.
Patrice, I hear you, but my point is Donald Trump could be 4 feet tall and he still would have won the election because it was based on ideas and the fact that she is an incompetent moron and sounds like an incompetent moron. But the campaign team, they just thought it was a visual problem. And if that's the case, they'll continue to lose. It's 7:23.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company on this Friday morning. We're going to finish off your week the right way. Head you straight into the weekend in a good mood, hopefully. Coming up at 8:05, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. At 8:35, Susan Ferriccio of the Washington Times. Get the inside deal on this Schumer cave-in to the Republicans. Looks like there won't be a shutdown. We'll see. We'll see what happened behind all of that. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday and happy Pie Day.
Yes, happy Pie Day. As we turn our sights to Annapolis, Maryland, as Democrats are trying to get a bigger piece of your pie. More taxes, and more taxes because, you know, one thing, you ask anyone in Maryland, you ask any Maryland, Patrice, you and I, we're both Marylanders. It's like,
we both live in Maryland, yes.
What's the one downside of living in Maryland? And the only answer you can come up with is they just don't charge taxes in this state.
Yes. Taxes.
We are not taxed enough. Thank God the Democrats and Westmore are there to right that wrong. And this guy, Justin Reedy, Republican in the state Senate, he's at, why are you getting in the way of a good time? We aren't paying enough taxes in Maryland, Justin.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's I know you want it. Come and get it. Seems like several of my Democratic colleagues keep putting in more and more bills with new and creative ways to take money away from your pocket.
Yeah. So what's this latest? I know they want to tax our Amazon deliveries. They want to tax tons of now. Whenever they propose a business tax, do they not recognize that we, the consumers, are the ones who pay that tax?
I think sometimes that is lost on certain members. I will say this about I know you want to talk about the driving tax. I'm sure the business to business tax. The only thing I'll say positive is that I have seen quietly a number of Democrat elected officials saying they're not so sure about this because of the excellent pushback that so many business people and just citizens in general have contacted their legislators. And so I encourage people, even if you live in a really blue area, don't hesitate. Please email and call your state legislator. You may think, oh, they're super liberal, but when you hear from constituents, it does make you think. And I think it's caused people to go, wait a minute, we already have a problem with. The governor himself has said our problem is not enough private sector economic growth. His policies don't do anything to fix that, but at least he said that. So it's like this is going to be even worse for our small businesses in particular. This would really hurt our small businesses. So I'm hoping we've had some good pushback. We'll see what happens with it, though. But please keep contacting your legislators.
Well, and just to put a point on this, is a 2.5% small business service tax. So if I have a small business and I would be taxed on the services to my client, but if I also outsource, like let's say I outsource my accounting, outsource my repairs, outsource other services, those would also be taxed 2.5%. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct. So no, we've never done this before. There's a 6% sales tax in Maryland, but we do not tax services. This would say that if let's say you're a small like a restaurant and you are trying to figure out your taxes now because Maryland has made it so confusing and awful, and you go to a CPA, you will then have to pay that CPA. He'll have to charge you 2.5% tax. If you cater his event, you have to charge him. If you provide some sort of service to him, you have to charge 2.5% tax. So it just, and of course, it ends up getting passed on to consumers eventually.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about this tax on driving. This hits so close to home for me, Senator Reedy, and I know I'm not alone. When I purchased my home, I work in Washington, D.C. I knew when I purchased my home that I would be commuting. So I had a choice. I could live in Leesburg. I could live in Fredericksburg. I could live in Woodbridge. I could live in Vienna and all across Northern Virginia. I chose to live in Maryland. I like Maryland. And I drive many miles every single day there and back from home to my job in Washington, D.C. And now, for my efforts, for my choice of living in Maryland, your friends, the Democrats in Annapolis, want to tax me for that. They want to tax me because I drive on highways that I've already paid for with my tax dollars.
This is correct. The proposal, and I, for years, not every session, but for several sessions, I've put in a bill to ban the state or local governments from ever doing what I'm about to talk about, because I think it's, number one, it's an un-American tax because it's a desire to punish people. It's a desire to punish people for how far they drive, but it's also a way for the government to keep tabs on, boy, you sure are driving a lot. You sure are driving a lot. Now, there's even a part of the proposal where someone could have GPS tracking on their car. That won't be mandated according to the proposal. It's just an option. But that's creepy enough in itself. I don't want the government knowing that's really bad. I don't want the government knowing where I'm driving. But number two, even if you opt out of that, you still have to report how much you're driving every year. Well, that's none of the government's business. And so you're right. You already pay. We have one of the highest gas taxes in the country, and it goes up every year on July 1st by the rate of inflation. This is saying.
And Senator Reedy, ironically, revenue from the gas tax is down right now, Senator Reedy. And, of course, that's because people are opting to get EVs because Governor Wes Moore has mandated electric vehicles in Maryland. He wants to phase out. So now suddenly it's like, people are buying electric cars. So now we got to figure out another way to have revenue because we're not making as much on the gas tax. It's all their policies. They're the ones who have caused all of this.
Everything, Maryland has a host of problems right now in state government, and basically everything is a self-inflicted wound. Almost everything is a self-inflicted wound. Literally, we've chosen this for ourselves. And what's interesting is last year the General Assembly put a registration charge on electric vehicles, which I actually was supportive of because they pay no gas tax. I don't have a problem with that. A lot of states have done that. If you're not going to pay any gas tax, you have to pay something because your car is heavier than the gas car is. And wear and tear on the roads. But this is trying to I think that the idea is you could do this instead of that, but then it also applies this new driving tax to gas-powered vehicles. And it's what I've always said about this. Not only are there privacy issues, not only is it trying to punish you for driving, but in some states they've talked about doing a driving tax instead of a gas tax. So they want to put it on top of the gas tax. I mean, it's just outrageous.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right.
So
what can we do? Who should we talk to stop this?
I hate to sound like a broken record. Contacting your legislators and telling them you do not want this is the thing you can do most of all. Spreading the word about it. I actually think this particular proposal probably isn't going to move this session, just because there's so many things going on. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a very loud and strong pushback, because it's just a terrible. And the other thing is, the idea of a driving tax. This is not the governor's proposal, this bill, but the Maryland Department of the Environment in their long-range climate change planning has a plan to pay for all of the things we need to do for man-made climate change that they say. One of the things includes some sort of commuter tax, driving tax to help offset the costs of the pollution from your car, yada, yada, yada. So this is definitely a Moore administration thing that could happen in the future. So I think the louder we can push back now and say this is a red line that we cannot cross, and this hurts working people, the working poor, and middle class people the most. So again, I think it's absolutely a terrible policy that should be thrown into the ash heap of history.
Thank you, State Senator Justin
Thanks
Reedy.
so much,
Appreciate you joining us.
WMAL, making sense of education, because what's happening in your kid's school matters. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
As you know, Patrice, MSNBC has laid off or fired so many of their longtime primetime hosts of color, and they've kept all their white hosts because they're racist over there. But one of their straight white dudes who still has a job, he announced yesterday that he's going to take a week off because he's so tired. Here, listen to Lawrence O'Donnell.
It's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. And I know you've pledged to cover and be here for the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. I hope you noticed that I did not make that same pledge when you did.
You're not going anywhere, are you?
Well, here's the thing. This is day 52. I thought it was day 92. It turns out it's day 52, Rachel, and I'm exhausted at day 52. And so I'm going to take next week off. And I'm telling you that now because I know you don't like it when I just drift away, and I don't. But just taking next week off. Then I can come back and go with you all the way to the 100 days. And
I know we all tell each other you have to take care of yourself, you got to pace yourself, you got to be in this for the long haul, and so I can't hold it against you, but I'm very sad.
Can you hold this against me? I'm going to get a head start by taking tomorrow off.
Go. He's just so exhausted. Can I just tell you something? If they felt like they were winning, they wouldn't be so exhausted. They wouldn't need time off. If they thought that they were actually, winning the day. So there you go. You got to feel for Lawrence. Do you think he'll be back, or do you think they'll replace him while he's gone?
I don't think he'll be back. I mean, I think he may come back for a very short period, and then he's done. I actually think he's done. And listen, if you are actually promoting the news in a fair and balanced way, at least somewhat, then maybe you wouldn't be so tired of lying, misinformation, cover-ups, and all of the other gunk that goes on MSNBC. That is one network that I really don't watch for that reason.
If they do let Lawrence O'Donnell go, we know he won't be taking up a job in the construction business, right? Because, I mean, let's face it, he has a history with hammering.
Stop the hammering. Stop the hammering out there. Who's got a hammer? Where is it?
I don't know.
Where's the hammer? Is it on the... Go up on the other floor. Somebody go up there and stop the hammering.